Have you ever stopped to think about why, even after studying personal finance, following the market, and trying to invest the right way, you never seem to get anywhere? Have you ever felt that, no matter how hard you try, there's always an invisible barrier preventing you from truly building wealth? Maybe the problem isn't the market, or a lack of information, or bad luck. Maybe you're not losing money. Maybe you're being filtered. Most people believe that the financial market is unfair, favoring only those with money, connections, or luck. But what almost no one realizes is that there's a silent, unwritten rule that operates even before the big money appears. A rule that gradually eliminates about 90% of investors without them even realizing they're out of the game. And the most dangerous part? While this is happening, these people believe they are evolving, learning, preparing for the future. Have you ever experienced this? Within the universe of personal finance and investments, there's a lot of talk about strategies, assets, returns, and opportunities. But almost no one talks about the filter, an invisible mechanism that doesn't depend on how much you know, but on how you behave over time. This is where the shark gate begins. A world that only appears after a certain level of financial maturity, usually after accumulating 250K. Before that, the system observes, tests, waits, and silently eliminates those who don't pass. The most uncomfortable thing is understanding that it's not about intelligence, degrees, or access to courses. Many of the people who fall by the wayside know exactly what to do. The problem is that there's a silent test happening every day. In small decisions, in how you react to losses, to promises of quick gains, to comparisons with others. The market doesn't punish the occasional mistake. It punishes patterns. And these patterns reveal who will never cross that threshold. Perhaps this explains that unsettling feeling of always running but never arriving, of seeing seemingly less prepared people moving forward while you remain stuck in the same cycle. What you're about to discover may surprise you, because this rule doesn't appear in famous books, isn't taught by gurus, and is rarely stated directly. It's applied silently, like a natural filter of behavior. Stay with me until the end, because understanding this initial shock completely changes how you see the investment game and the very idea of wealth. Accumulation. From here on, everything starts to make more sense, and some truths that nobody likes to say begin to emerge, one by one. And while you reflect on all of this, it's important to remember that this type of conversation almost never happens out loud. Usually these perceptions remain trapped in the minds of those who feel something is wrong, but can't quite explain what it is. Therefore, if at any point in what has been said so far, you thought, "This sounds like me," or "This explains a lot," leave that in the comments. Sharing your experience, your doubts, or even your discomfort creates a real space for exchange, where other people realize they are not alone in this silent process of building wealth. When you comment, you're not just reacting to a video, you're helping to give visibility to a type of content that goes beyond the superficial, that goes beyond quick promises and starts talking about behavior, mindset, and decisions that truly make a difference in the long run. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and reach more people who are also trying to understand why they always seem to be left outside that invisible door. If this topic resonates with you, liking the video is a simple yet powerful way to show that this type of approach deserves to continue. This helps the content reach more people who may be experiencing the same internal conflict, but haven't yet found the right words to express it. And if you feel this topic resonates with your current situation, subscribing to the channel signals that you want to continue this journey, step by step, understanding how the game really works before the big money arrives. Here, the idea isn't to teach shortcuts or magic formulas, but to build a community of people who are willing to see what almost no one talks about and to evolve consciously. And now that this feeling of maybe I'm being filtered has started to make sense, it's worth moving forward, because what comes next delves even deeper into this silent rule and begins to show how it operates every day without making a sound. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject because there's a hidden truth here that almost no one is willing to hear. When we talk about this silent rule, many people imagine something related to numbers, monthly income, a high salary, or the right asset at the right time. But the filter doesn't work that way. The financial elite, banks, funds, and big players aren't looking at how much you earn today. They observe something much more revealing: how you behave before you earn. It's at this invisible stage of the journey that almost everyone gives themselves away without realizing it. There's a huge difference between someone who's just trying to make money and someone who's actually undergoing a mindset transformation. The market tests this all the time. It puts on pressure, creates noise, offers seductive shortcuts, exposes constant comparisons, and observes how you react. Impatience is one of the first signs. The need for quick results, external validation, to prove something to someone. Those who can't handle the silence of the process rarely cross the shark gate. This rule doesn't appear in popular books, it's not in best-selling courses, and it rarely becomes viral content, precisely because it's not comfortable. It emerges in decision-making patterns, in the way someone changes strategy every week, in the excess of opinions without practical consistency, in the anxiety to count gains before even consolidating them, in the difficulty of sustaining decisions when no one is watching. All of this is observed, not openly, but behind the scenes of the system. Before reaching $250,000, the game is emotional. The market wants to know if you can handle repetition, boredom, the absence of applause, and the slow pace of real growth. It's not about genius, but about attitude. Large institutions know that big money isn't maintained through constant euphoria. That's why they filter behavior long before offering access, opportunities, or trust. Those who fail at this stage usually blame the market, the economy, the government, or bad luck, without realizing that the impact comes from their own reactions. There is also the relentless search for shortcuts. Always the next promise, the next miraculous strategy, the next revelation that nobody told you. This creates the sensation of movement, but does not generate real progress. In practice, this behavior signals instability, and instability is everything the system avoids when deciding who can or cannot advance. The shark gate doesn't open for those who run from one side to the other, but for those who uphold decisions even when nothing seems to be happening. Another delicate point is the excess of opinions. Before accumulating wealth, many people speak like experts, opine on everything, discuss every market movement, but execute little and change too quickly. This is also part of the filter. Quiet consistency is worth more than confident speeches. And this is a difficult shock to accept because it goes against the logic of constant exposure and the need for immediate recognition. The most curious thing is that almost no one realizes they are being tested. Most believe they are still preparing, when in fact they are already being emotionally evaluated. This period defines who will continue to accumulate power over time and who will remain trapped in cycles of trial and error. This is where the journey truly begins to diverge, long before the numbers start to stand out. And as this understanding begins to fall into place, it becomes impossible to look at your own decisions in the same way. Some actions start to make more sense, others begin to bother you. If at any point in this reflection you felt that silent discomfort, write in the comments, "This makes sense to me." This simple phrase already says a lot about someone who has begun to see the game beyond the surface, because there is still a deeper level to this rule. And it is there that the shark gate truly begins to reveal itself. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because this is where most people get lost without realizing it. There's a very common feeling in the world of personal finance, that of always being busy, always learning, always adjusting something. A person reads another book, watches another video, changes their strategy, tests a new approach, and feels like they're evolving. The problem is that movement isn't the same thing as progress, and this level of detail changes everything in the journey of building wealth. The hard truth is that many investors believe they are on the right track simply because they are doing something, but in practice, they are only reacting to the noise. News, opinions, charts, promises, constant comparisons with those who got there. This creates the illusion of progress, when in reality, real power is not being accumulated. The system doesn't eliminate those who make mistakes once or twice. It eliminates those who live in reactive mode, those who can never sustain a decision long enough for it to generate real impact. Noise is one of the greatest mechanisms of exclusion. It occupies the mind, drains focus, and creates anxiety. Those who are always attentive to everything are, in essence, not committed to anything. Constant comparison is also part of this invisible filter. looking at others. Results without seeing the process distorts the perception of one's own journey. The person begins to think they are behind schedule, that they need to speed up, that they need to do something different now. And it is at this point that emotional decisions arise. Impulsive trades, abrupt course corrections, abandoning well-structured plans due to fear or euphoria. All of this seems like action, but it functions as a signal of instability. And instability is exactly what the market uses as a silent exclusion criterion. Not because someone is rooting against it, but because large amounts of capital don't coexist well with erratic behavior. This is a hidden truth that almost no one wants to face. Another delicate point is the feeling of intellectual evolution without practical transformation. Knowing more doesn't mean being better positioned. Many people accumulate information, vocabulary, and opinions, but they don't accumulate coherence between what they think and what they do. This generates a dangerous internal disconnect. The person sees themselves as advanced, but their results remain stagnant. This internal conflict wears them down, generates frustration, and gradually pushes them towards increasingly emotional decisions. What's most striking is realizing that all of this happens while the person believes they are getting closer to their goal. They feel they are almost there, that they just need to adjust one detail, but that detail is precisely their behavior. It's the inability to sustain silence, repetition, and patience in a world addicted to stimulation and novelty. Those who don't realize this continue going in circles, accumulating attempts, but ultimately failing. This is the point of greatest identification, because almost everyone on this journey has gone through it. The feeling of constant effort without real consolidation, of learning without clarity, of movement without direction. Recognizing this isn't comfortable, but it's liberating. Because from this psychological mirror, some decisions begin to be seen in a different light. Some choices start to bother you more than before. And this discomfort is the first sign of true change. When that penny drops, the journey ceases to be merely external and becomes internal as well. Mindset, discipline, posture, and repetition take on a different weight. And it is precisely there that the game begins to level up, even if nothing is yet visible on the outside. If this part of the conversation touched on something you felt or experienced, comment below. I'm on this journey too. This silent recognition prepares the ground for understanding what happens when someone truly begins to emerge from the noise and approach the shark gate. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject because this is where the door truly begins to open, albeit silently. When someone passes through the invisible filter of the market, something changes that doesn't appear in the charts or statements. The environment becomes different. The noise diminishes. Artificial urgencies lose their power. That constant feeling of being behind simply begins to disappear. And this doesn't happen by luck, nor by an isolated event, but by a sequence of coherent decisions that have been validated over time. After reaching $250,000, the game changes because the mindset changes first. The investor who goes through this phase no longer reacts to everything. They choose what's worth responding to. Opportunities don't arrive shouting. They don't come wrapped in exaggerated promises or catchy headlines. Often, they don't even seem like opportunities at first glance. They are discrete conversations, small movements, decisions almost invisible to those still living in the noise. This is one of the most ignored behind-the-scenes aspects of wealth building. There is also a clear shift in pace. Haste ceases to be the driving force. Calmness becomes a competitive advantage. Those who have reached this point understand that they don't need to prove anything to anyone. There is no longer that anxiety about counting gains, showing results, or comparing oneself. Status becomes silent, almost internal. It's the confidence of someone who knows why they do what they do, even when no one is watching. This transformation is profound and completely changes the relationship with money, time, and choices. Access also transforms, not because someone opened a secret door, but because consistent behavior builds trust. Banks, funds, partners, and larger structures feel more comfortable dealing with those who demonstrate emotional predictability, discipline, and a long-term vision. This access doesn't come with the spotlight. It happens behind the scenes, in environments where silence is valued more than exposure. That's where the shark door truly reveals itself. Another important point is that, at this stage, decisions cease to be reactive. They become strategic. It's no longer about taking advantage of everything that comes along, but about rejecting far more than accepting. This requires maturity, because saying no to mediocre opportunities is as difficult as resisting easy promises at the beginning of the journey. But it is precisely this ability to choose that signals that the filter has been passed. It's common to look from the outside and think these people were lucky, that they were in the right place at the right time. But that's a superficial interpretation. What nobody sees are the years of repetition, the tedious decisions, the moments of doubt sustained in silence. The behavior was gradually validated until the environment began to respond differently. The impact of this goes beyond money. It affects how the person thinks, positions themselves, and sees their own future. At this point in the journey, the game doesn't get easier, but it becomes clearer. Fewer distractions, less emotional strain, more focus on what truly drives wealth consistently. And when this clarity appears, a strange sense of belonging also emerges, as if everything finally begins to make sense, even without major announcements or visible milestones. It's an internal shift that prepares the ground for even quieter and more powerful decisions. If this vision of the future has sparked something in you, if this idea of a calmer, more strategic game seems to make sense, comment below. This makes sense to me. This simple phrase helps to understand those who are already beginning to see what lies beyond the noise, because there is still one last level to this transformation, the one that defines how to behave in order to stay in the game without being eliminated again. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because after understanding the filter, the noise, and what changes when the door begins to open, the most important question of all arises: how to play this game without being eliminated before even getting there. And the answer doesn't involve shortcuts, secret strategies, or spectacular moves. It almost always begins with something far less glamorous, but infinitely more powerful: posture. Posture is how you position yourself when no one is directly observing you. It's the decision not to react to every stimulus, not to constantly explain yourself, not to need to prove that you know or are right. The system observes this attentively. Those who move silently, with discipline and consistency, rarely enter the negative radar. Those who constantly try to be seen, validated, or recognized too early end up exposing themselves more than they realize. And excessive exposure, before its time, usually comes at a high price. Discipline comes next, not as extreme rigidity, but as the ability to repeat correct decisions even when they seem tedious. There's a hidden truth in building wealth. Almost nothing that truly works is exciting in the short term. Consistent repetition, small adjustments, and course correction don't generate impressive stories, but they create real impact along the way. The market values those who endure this process without giving up or reinventing everything with every setback. Strategic silence is also part of this game. Silence is not omission, it's a choice. Choosing not to comment on everything, not to react to every move made by others, not to turn every decision into a spectacle. Behind the scenes, this behavior is interpreted as maturity. Large organizations prefer to deal with those who act more than they speak, who observe more than they opine. This type of mentality builds trust even before any visible results. Another essential point is the long-term perspective. Playing the game that doesn't eliminate requires accepting that some rewards simply don't appear quickly. And that's okay. Those who understand this don't despair when results take time, nor are they dazzled when something works out too soon. There's a different kind of calm in those who think in long cycles, because decisions are filtered by future impact, not by the emotion of the moment. This completely changes how the system responds to you. Consistent repetition is perhaps the most underestimated element of all. Doing the basics well often seems too simple to be true, but it is precisely this sustained simplicity that eliminates fewer people from the game. The market doesn't demand constant genius. It demands emotional predictability, process clarity, and the ability to persevere even when there is no external stimulus. This type of behavior gradually shapes the mindset, almost without fanfare. It's important to emphasize that it's not about winning quickly. That's the trap that eliminates you early. It's about staying in the game, about not leaving due to emotional exhaustion, excessive comparison, or impulsive decisions. Those who learn to play this way build something solid even before the numbers catch their attention. The transformation happens internally first, in the way they think, decide, and react. Money comes as a consequence, not as a starting point. When this clarity begins to form, something interesting happens. Fear diminishes, anxiety loses its power, and decisions begin to carry more weight than opinions. The journey ceases to be a desperate race and becomes a conscious path. And it is precisely in this state that new layers of this game begin to reveal themselves, with nuances that only make sense to those who have already understood that surviving is more important than shining too soon. If this perspective brought you a feeling of control, relief, or even silent identification, comment below. I'm on this journey too. This simple recognition connects those who have already realized that the real game doesn't begin when you win big, but when you learn not to be eliminated before you get there. Because there's an even more subtle level to this mindset that deserves to be explored. If you've made it this far, it's because something in this conversation has stayed with you from beginning to end. And that in itself says a lot about where you are on this journey. This type of reflection isn't common or comfortable, but it's exactly what helps you see the game more clearly and with less illusion. So, if this content gave you any insight, if any phrase kept echoing in your head, subscribing to the channel is a simple way to continue having access to this type of conversation, without easy promises, but with real value for those who want to understand what happens behind the scenes of wealth building. If you'd like, leave a short comment below so I know you stayed until the end. You can write something like, "This message was for me," or "I'm with you until the end." This creates a silent connection with the viewer and shows that this type of content resonates with you. And if at any point in the video you felt the conversation flowed, that it felt more like a dialogue than a lecture, a like helps reinforce exactly that, allowing this message to reach more people who may be going through the same process. Now, there's a video over here that perfectly complements everything we've discussed today. It delves deeper into this same mindset from another angle, with more details that make sense when you put the pieces together. Click there and continue the conversation. It doesn't end here. It just moves on to an even more interesting level.